Easter eggs. I think we're all familiar with them. So much so, I think we've all seen an Easter egg in our lives that made us think out loud, what the f***? Sometimes this is actually the point of an Easter egg, as they're often the product of an employee who was bored out of their mind during production and had to hide something inside the work that only they themselves would know about. I know I'm guilty. This of course brings us to the question of this video. Has anyone ever been fired for an Easter egg? The answer is yes. In fact, there's one famous case you may have heard about. Usually when the discussion of Easter eggs getting people fired comes along, the discussion usually ends with that famous case and that's it. I'm going to share with you a few more stories that I've gathered. I found these by searching the deepest corners of the internet, and today you're going to find out a few stories about people that got fired from Easter eggs that you probably didn't know about. Gex. I found out about this in a fascinating blog written by game developer Greg Mann on his personal website. It's been hosted on there since 1997. Greg's story is about Gex's lead designer, named here as Justin, who slowly lost his mind as his creation quickly lost his vision. Gex was originally a game about a stuntman in Hollywood where every level was a different scene on a different movie production where you had to perform a stunt for the film crew and would receive points based on your level of style and success. Now, considering we all know that Gex is actually a popular 90s video game series about a gecko that gets addicted to TV who gets sucked into the world of television, I think it's safe to say there may have been a little shift from his original vision. In what was considered a rare move of Justin at this point in employment, he came in one day during the weekend of Final Crunch. He found out that one of his levels had been edited and completely lost his shit. He went into his office and didn't come back out until he finished programming an Easter egg into Gex that he felt served as his personal payback. Originally, the player could find a secret message on one of the Kung Fu levels. The secret message told the player the game's level select code and asked the player to choose a certain level. The level it said to choose was actually the unedited version of Justin's original level, with elements in it that Greg here says were too glitchy to actually make final release. When the player beat the level, a final message would conjure up for the player. The message, according to Greg, was something close to this. Didn't you think this level had some cool shit in it? This level was cut because the company didn't put you, the customer, first because they just wanted to make some money. Call Madeline Capet at 555-1212 and give her a piece of your mind, and my mind too. Unfortunately for Justin, playtesters found the egg almost immediately. Soon after, they showed it to the suits at the publisher. Immediately, their decision was to fire Justin. They feared that Panasonic, who agreed to bundle Gex with their upcoming console to 3DO, would not find such an unprofessional message amusing. The suits felt Justin's Easter egg had potentially threatened their relationship with Panasonic. Considering Justin put at risk their entirely free distribution model with Panasonic, Justin nearly costed the publisher a huge monetary loss, and for that reason, Justin's Easter egg got him fired. Commodore Amiga. So thank you to commenter Troy Wilkins for sharing this story with me, very similar to the Gex story, except perhaps with an even crazier outcome. On the Commodore Amiga Kickstart 1.2, version 33.166, built into the ROM in early Amiga 500 and 2000 computers, if you were to hold Alt, Shift, and F10, this message would appear at the top of the screen. Management did actually find this Easter egg before release and told the programmer to remove it. He did remove it, but then he put it right back in using a different set of combinations. Units had already been shipped to the United Kingdom with the offending Easter egg, and when Amiga found out, they had to recall tens of thousands of units and replace all the ROMs. They missed 3 months of sales in a major market, which not only prompted the firing of the engineer who did the egg, they also shut down an entire branch, forcing hundreds of people out of their jobs. Amazing what 7 hidden words can do. James May. James May was the features editor of AutoCar magazine in the early 1990s. I know myself it's not easy to resist the urge to kill the boredom and mundanity of your day job by hiding some hidden content you're sure your colleagues and staff will never see. Well, James May decided to do just that, but he didn't exactly do that in a way that was easy for him to get away with it. You see, James decided to hide a secret message using the giant first letter at the beginning of every article. When he spelled the whole thing out, it said, "So, you think it's really good, yeah? You should try making the bloody thing up. It's a real pain in the." When readers began calling in the magazine thinking they would win a prize for finding the secret message, the staff quickly learned of May's Easter egg and Mays was quickly let go. Don't worry though, he found much greater success as one of the hosts of one of the most successful shows in the world, Top Gear. Simcopter. This is actually the most famous example, and I mentioned it earlier at the beginning of the video. Essentially, this Easter egg is this: set the game to Friday the 13th and then fly around and you'll start to see bikinied men everywhere. The premise behind this Easter egg is what the programmer Zhao claimed was the product of his sexist boss. Essentially, his boss demanded that more bimbos be added to his game, and Zhao did not appreciate the poor taste remark. This case was very famous because you would stumble upon this Easter egg without even really having to do much. You just happened to play the game on the Friday the 13th of the year that the game came out. You would suddenly be bombarded with naked men all around you at once. Needless to say, when the publisher found out about this, Zhao found himself out of a job. The BBC. In an article written for the BBC about a history of Doctor Who props, clever users on Twitter noticed that if you took the first letter of every sentence in the article, it spelled out the BBC worldwide are BBC quickly figured out that this article was written by the prop coordinator on Doctor Who, and he was upset about the refusal of a certain season's distribution. The BBC quickly rendered his relationship with the company no more. Really not hard to figure out why the BBC took such great offense from a line like that and fired him. Marvel Comics. Marvel Comics fired artist Adrian Zoft over a secret message hidden in Marvel Comic X-Men Gold #1. The reference was a verse in the Quran 551. 551 was a verse being used in Indonesia at the time to promote the idea that Christians should not be voted into government. Considering Marvel's influence in American culture, it's pretty obvious why they didn't feel okay with that kind of political association. Show de Millo. Now, I couldn't personally confirm this for myself, but I'm going to put it on here in case anybody can uncover some more information. I found out about this in a comment from Rud John. He says, "This happened in Brazil. In the early 2000s, there was a popular TV show called Show de Milho, which is basically a version of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. And of course, there were several PC games of the show. The fourth version of the game came with this question: what is the size of my huge, gigantic, monumental, or immense? The person who did the joke got fired. Now, I really want to believe that this one is true, but of course, since it took place in Brazil, I wasn't able to really find any information about this myself. Please let me know if you know anything more about this Easter egg. An Easter egg that actually saved someone's job. That's right, I'm actually going to close not with an Easter egg that got someone fired, but actually managed to do quite the opposite. Benefited this person's life quite a bit. Now, I found this as an anonymous post while I was doing research on the subject and a deep dive in a forum, so take that with a grain of salt, but even so, I found this story enormously valuable because it even changed my perspective on an Easter egg. There was a point in time where Easter eggs were almost always usually viewed as time wasters. Apple and Microsoft both implemented policies in the late 90s banning Easter eggs in any of the workplace, claiming that it hurt productivity and functionality of their products. But in this story, this programmer actually manages to create an argument for Easter eggs and actually why it might be more valuable to sometimes do one instead of not do one. Essentially, this programmer ran a company designing software for various companies, and in this situation, they were designing a program for managing call centers. He decided just as a joke to hide an Easter egg right there in the management software, but to keep it a secret from the other programmer he was working on the project with, he decided to hide the code and hid it across several various modules. The client for the programmers wanted a trial copy of the software. This was still pretty pre-software security times, so these guys burned the software onto a disk and gave it to their client for him to try out. The client called up and explained that he no longer needed their software. He explained that they already had an updated version of the software, that it had been laying around, and that theirs was not up to the same quality. The programmers asked if they could come in and take a look at the software for themselves. When they got to the call center, they looked at the interface and noticed that it looked similar to theirs, but not exactly alike. To them, it was possible that perhaps they had lifted their code and slightly altered it, only so it wouldn't look just enough alike so that they could get away with using their software without paying them a dime. Right then and there, that programmer knew what he had to do. He got in that seat and tried to do his Easter egg, and sure enough, there it was. It popped up there with the name, the date, his company's name, and a large picture of Sailor Moon, just as he had programmed. The call center operator turned white as a ghost. All of a sudden, he didn't want to talk. He called security and had both programmers shown to the door, but the damage was already done. Everybody had already seen what he did. It was decided in exchange for them not suing the company and telling everybody about it, that they would pay them 4 times the original contract value. The call center operator that pulled this move was fired from the company, so this Easter egg did technically get another person fired, so I didn't trick you in the end. This programmer goes on to say that ever since this incident has happened, he's gone on to hide an Easter egg in everything that he does. It's his special mark to guarantee that the product is his, and never again will he be in a situation as dire as the one here. If you want to discuss more Easter eggs like this, leave a comment below or even join the Discord. We got a great community of people there just discussing games, finding Easter eggs, sharing music. It's a great place. I'd love to see you there. If you want to see more content like this, please subscribe. Next video is going to be out within a couple days.